He's running for the U.S. House for a seat once held by Jesse Jackson Jr. Dr. Eric Wallace is our guest, coming up right now on Significant Insight. Hello and welcome to the program today. Good to have you with me. You know, it's midterm election season, and today my guest has a challenge for the church. It's for Christians to vote their values, not a party. And he wants all Christians not to vote for any candidate, Republican or Democrat, whose values don't line up with God's values. Dr. Eric Wallace has an extensive biography. He's been a soldier, a police officer, an educator, and a minister. And he's also a businessman, and he's the founder of Wallace Multimedia Group. I talked with him about his campaign and his challenge for the church. Eric, thanks for taking time to be with me. I appreciate it.
It's a pleasure being here. Thank you, Jim.
You're running for a very high-profile seat in the U.S. Congress, vacated by Jesse Jackson Jr., who joined a list of other Illinois politicians in prison for corruption. Why did you decide to run?
Well, I believe that the community needs to have a choice. You know, a lot of times they don't even get anybody to run against them. And I think it's time for the church to actually start looking at people and what they stand for, not necessarily a party. And I think the south suburbs of Chicago, as well as Will County and Kankakee, you know, they need to have somebody, they need to be given an option. And one of the things that we're doing in our campaign is actually challenging the church to vote its values, not political party.
Well, it brings up a very interesting question, because the Democratic Party in Chicago is composed of a lot of people, including churches, including the African American community, that are Democrats because they're Democrats.
Right.
And it really doesn't matter who is running. They're going to vote Democrat. However, we're at a point now to where the Democratic Party has such a radically extreme liberal agenda that it's got to be in conflict with where some of the pastors are, where some of the congregants are, of a lot of the, not just the African American churches, but the Hispanic churches, the white churches. How do you see that they're dealing with it?
Well, as you know, we had same-sex marriage passed here in Illinois, but before that, there were a number of African American pastors who actually got together and protested the whole thing, went down to Springfield and so forth. And I was one of those who went down to Springfield to protest. There are many who are starting to wake up, I believe, to realize that, blindly supporting any party is not good for us. We have same-sex marriage because we continue to put the same people in office who we've always put in office because they had a D behind their name. For Democrat, we voted for them. And like I said, we're challenging people now to vote their values, not just party. And I even had to learn that as somebody who's running as a Republican, that even the Republican Party sometimes is actually on that trajectory, if you will, because there's some in the party who are for, support same-sex marriage. Actually, the former chairman of the party, Pat Brady, supported same-sex marriage. So I'm out here now calling people to think more about the kingdom principles and loyalty to our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, as opposed to loyalty toward a party. And when you put it that way to pastors, then they start thinking, okay, I can get behind that.
Are they listening? Because there's also a lot of feeling among the Democrats and among the African Americans and a lot of people in the city of Chicago, that being Democrat is almost like a religion. You grow up with it.
Right.
You're Democrat. It's almost like being Catholic. You're Catholic because
you were born.
You're born Catholic.
Right.
You're Democrat because you're born Democrat, and it's difficult sometimes to make that change, and the social pressure is difficult. But do you see some of the people, some of the Christians, who are seeing the problems with such a liberal Democratic Party, primarily on values? There's still some things that they would support, some of the platform, but in terms of basic human, spiritual, Christian, religious values. They cannot support that.
Well, you know, you're giving my speech that I to other people. I said, how can we preach one thing Sunday morning, and then on the first Tuesday in November, go out and totally undo that by voting for people who don't share our values? That's why we've been pushing this. Vote your values. Learn what people stand. Don't just blindly vote for them. Again, we have same-sex marriage in Illinois because we did that. We have a governor who's pro same-sex marriage, and he thinks he's going to get the African American vote. That comes with years and years of the black community continue to vote for Democrats, and now the Democrats take it for granted that they're going to continue to vote this way.
Robin Kelly, who is a very liberal, perhaps radically liberal, Democratic candidate, won the Jesse Jackson Jr. seat in a special election by something like 70%. How do you think that you're going to fare against her liberal agenda? Are enough people listening, Eric?
I'm an ordained minister myself. I hold a Ph.D. in biblical studies.
Yeah.
So when I start talking to pastors about this issue, they at least start to listen. Now, they may not agree with me on everything, but they know that when I start talking about the social issues, they know I'm right on point. And so it's challenging them now to, like you said, there are some folks who are conflicted because for so long they've been taught that the Republican Party doesn't care about black people, that all the Dixiecrats went into the Republican Party and they're all a bunch of racists. Matter of fact, they've gotten to the point where they've conflated the whole idea of segregationists with conservatism. And I have to try and tell them, look, they're not one and the same. Segregationists were actually progressives. If you look at Woodrow Wilson, he was one of the biggest progressives there was, but he was a segregationist. So part of it is re-education.
He was also another academic who was elected president.
Absolutely. He was. He had been a college professor, that's right.
Academics don't do terribly well, or academics or community organizers.
Oh, you can't say that because I'm an academic as well. I'm a Ph.D. So
you're an exception.
But it's in biblical studies, so that's where I have my grounding. So, it's actually trying to wake up the church and actually challenge the church to be the church. Robin Kelly did win. It was a low turnout. The gentleman who ran before, I know Paul McKinley, he's a friend of mine, he didn't have the entrance into the church that I have. I know a number of pastors in the community, and I'm challenging them.
Kelly was supporting LGBT. I mean, she was really sanctioning, yes. She was pushing for it. But isn't that a bit unusual in her district?
It is, but she didn't push for it in the election. See, she was smart. She didn't talk about it at all. But now that she's in, she sent out some statements talking about, I think Obama made, I think it was either June or July, I can't remember, LGBT month or something like that. Yeah, she's been pushing it since then.
Do you feel that perhaps will give you an edge in this election?
Well, that's my hope. That's my hope that, like I said, that the church wakes up and decides, because I believe that the district itself is very conservative, especially in the African American communities. When Proposition 8 passed in California, it passed because a lot of blacks went out and supported it. And it was overturned by, I think, by the judges. But generally speaking, when that's on the ballot, generally the black community is when it comes out and votes it down. So I'm hoping that Robin Kelly continues to talk about it and want to push it forward. Because then it'll wake some people up and say, does this person really represent you? Does this person really represent your values? And do you want that person in? Or does Eric Wallace really represent your values? And who do you want in Congress representing you?
When we return, Eric talks about his core values that he believes in as a Christian and also as a candidate. And he's also going to talk about what he calls his RISE principles. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Today, my guest is Dr. Eric Wallace. He's running for the U.S. Congress in Illinois, 2nd Congressional District. Now, that seat was filled by Jesse Jackson Jr. before he went to prison on corruption charges. Last year, a special election was held to temporarily fill his seat, and Democrat Robin Kelly won that election. Eric now is running against her. In part one, Eric challenged the church to vote according to its Christian values. Well, in part two, he talks about those values, the values that guide his own life and his campaign.
I'm a staunch conservative. I believe that marriage is between one man and one woman. I'm pro-life. I believe that God is the author of life. We shouldn't be taking people's The safest place for a baby should be in the mother's womb. Right now it's not. And so, there's certain things that we need to fight against. I mean, especially in the African American community. We only make up like 13% of the population, and yet 30 to 40% of the abortions are formed on black women, on black babies. So, some of that's got to change. And the only one who can actually change this is actually the black community itself.
Let's talk about some of your principles. You have a thing called the RISE, R-I-S-E principles. What are they? How did you come up with them? And how are you teaching these?
So our RISE acronym is responsible government, individual liberty and fidelity, strong family values, and economic empowerment.
Let's talk about responsible government first.
When we talk about responsible government, we talk about a government that spends its money within its budget, don't go outside the budget of the money that comes in. Responsible government is one that tries to tell you, what kind of health care you should buy. It's actually limited by the Constitution. We have this thing that called the rule of law, and there's a Constitution that kind of tells you, it gives you the parameters from which the federal government is able to work. And so we say we need to have responsible government that responds to and abides by the law itself. And the problem is, with these RISE principles, they're not compartmentalized. They actually overflow into one another. So when you have irresponsible government, what happens with irresponsible government? It starts impeding on your individual liberty. Because now you're not able to, as we've seen with Obamacare, now you're not able to keep your doctor, as he said you were going to be able to do.
Responsible government is the first in your RISE. Second, individual liberty and fidelity. Talk about that.
Absolutely. We believe that if you look at the Declaration of Independence, it talks about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Well, obviously we stand for life. We believe life should be protected, but the second one is liberty. And you have to have liberty if you're going to be able to pursue happiness or to do certain things. I mean, our founding fathers left. They left England because government was too big and it was trying to tell you exactly what you could do and couldn't do. We don't want that kind of government. When government gets too big, it starts trying to tell you what you can and cannot do. And we have examples of that.
That's a limited government part.
That's limited government, but it
has to be.
But it overflows into liberty part. Yeah. So liberty part says that that laws restrict the free exercise of liberty. So if you're going to come up with a law, you need to have a really good reason for that law. As a matter of fact, the governing bodies that want to implement, actually it starts out as a bill, but once they turn that bill into a law, has to have the burden of proof to decide that we have to have that law. Because any law that is put out there is going to restrict somebody or restrict something. So we say that, we need to make sure that these laws, we're not supposed to go to Congress just to make up a bunch of laws. Matter of fact, there are probably some laws in the book we need to get rid of.
Well, there's probably a lot of laws on the books that need to be got rid of, but what we're having now, it appears to me, Eric, is that rather than Congress legislating and making the laws, all of a sudden you're having agencies that are beginning to interpret their power under this administration because they feel like they can in some pretty repressing kinds of ways. The EPA, for example, and some of the things that they're now saying, oh yeah, we have the right to do this. We have the power, we have the legal power to do this. The IRS, a number of other agencies who are, the NSA, are suddenly taking on themselves the kinds of power that create unlimited government and excessive government power. What happens? I mean, what do we do with this?
We have to find a way to rein them in. Again, it's going back to the rule of law. And I think at some point, there has been talk about impeachment and all these, taking him to court. The Congress has the power of the purse, and it can decide we're not going to fund these particular bills.
That's a good start. But it takes guys they're willing to come together and to do that.
Right, right. And we have to have the
They have to have the fortitude.
Fortitude, thank you.
The fortitude.
That's what I was looking. I had another word in mind, but that's
They
good.
have to have the fortitude
yes.
to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Strong family values. You're a strong family value
Absolutely,
man.
absolutely.
Strong family values in the Democratic Party today are down the tubes.
Yeah, down the tubes. It is. And under strong family values.
Family in the Democratic Party today, the family is a negative.
Right, because we want to redefine what it is. And I want to define it as God has defined it, between one man and one woman. And we know that because we know that one of the problems we have right now in Chicago is all these gangs and people getting shot and killed. You may ask, what does that have to do with strong family values? It has to do with strong family values because we know that when young men are brought up in a household with a mother and a father, they're less likely to join gangs, get involved in delinquent activity. Young ladies are less viable to get involved in promiscuity, things like that. So if the government were to have actually policies that actually helped families move forward and to be viable, it would be a lot better for us than trying to redefine family. And actually, it'd probably be better if government just stayed out of the whole family business.
Are you getting good response from the African American community when you talk about family values?
Yes. Because as we said, a lot of folks who are churchgoers, Bible believers, are really strong on that issue.
Economic empowerment.
Economic
That's a good one.
empowerment, yes. We believe that the free market system is the best way for those who are disenfranchised or impoverished to move from poverty to prosperity. It's been shown time and time again that you can't tax people into prosperity. They need to be able to, be encouraged to start their own businesses. This whole thing about raising minimum wage is a terrible thing because it hurts young, unskilled labor. People won't hire folks. If you have minimum wage of $15 an hour, you're not going to hire young kids in high school or just coming out of high school for their first job. They're going to hire adults. And that leads back to the whole gang activity again. So economic empowerment is trying to get people to understand how do we create wealth. Instead of let's having a fight on poverty, it's almost like saying let's have a fight on darkness.
But in Illinois, you're having major companies who are leaving.
Yes.
Former Abbott Labs, they're looking to leave, go overseas because of the excessive taxes. But there's another issue. President Obama is asking for $3.7 billion.
Right.
A good portion of that money would be entitlement money for illegal immigrants. There was a major protest in Chicago from people who were basically saying, why are you giving that money to them? Why don't you give that money to us? The good news is people are saying you shouldn't do that. The bad news is part of what they're asking for is the entitlement money, just more entitlement money, rather than genuine economic empowerment. That's a problem.
It is, and it doesn't help anybody with, if we give them that money, whether it's for illegals or whether it's for, American citizens, it just creates dependency. And so we're interested in government programs that help people get off of the welfare bandwagon, if you will, and be able to stand on their own 2 feet. How do we do that? And I think we need to be looking at that, and I think that comes with the help of the church again. My feeling is that the government has tried to do a lot of what the church is supposed to be doing.
So faith-based cooperation.
Absolutely. Because it's a faith-based cooperation that will help people, actually move and take a look at their lives and change. Government can't do that. All government does is give you a check.
Thank you for being with me, and I wish you the best.
Thank you.
We're praying for you and keeping up with you, all right?
Thank you.
Thank you.